I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration. They make ladies see the blues. I'm the spark that makes your idea bright. The same spark that likes the dark, so that you can find your level. I am the ballad in your box, the bullet in the gun, in the glow that lets you know the target of the sun. The story that we begun, the promise of what's to come, and I will remain a soldier till the war is won.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and we're here at the Southeastern Railway Museum in Duluth, Georgia. My cousins and I, shout out to them by the way, visited the museum on this hot summer's day of June 2025, a few days prior to my mother's wedding, as we'd be in the area. Send some congratulations in the chat if you'd like to, by the way. I'm very happy for her. As one would expect where this museum is situated, which is fairly in the middle of Georgia, it holds some of Georgia's, or more importantly the South's, most cherished pieces of vintage rail equipment. Along with a few buses and other miscellaneous road vehicles, the museum holds a wide collection of passenger cars and other freight cars, one of Atlanta's plane trains, and a collection of steam locomotives. This one here being Chattahoochee Valley, number 21. Built by Baldwin in 1924, it served on the Chattahoochee until 1961, and now it sits on display at the museum. But who can stop at steam? This here is CSX number 8954, an SD45-2 built by EMD in 1974, and it served for the Seaboard Coastline and eventually CSX up until 2011. It's notable for being the first of its class under preservation. The 8954 is actually the perfect candidate for me to explain. I've actually been to this museum before. I just technically didn't have enough footage to make a whole video out of it. Back in 2024, I was able to witness something very historic. The first ever breaths of life of the 8954 in preservation. And being able to witness and capture its first movements at the Southeastern under its own power. Back to modern day, we revisit the locomotive we saw pull into the museum area earlier in the video, Southern Railway number 8202. This SW7 switcher was built by EMD in 1950 for the Georgia Southern and Florida Railroad. It served on the GS&F even after the operation was adapted by the Southern Railway, in which it aided the South's biggest rail operation up until 1982. In which that same year it was donated to the Southeastern. Even though this is a diesel locomotive, it is still considered vintage powered. I mean, it was built in 1950. The SW7s were one of the many SW series switchers produced by EMD. There are still a handful of SWs still in existence, either under preservation or in active service for shorter operations or industries. Those who have watched the channel may think back to the many SWs that have been featured on here, probably the most notable one to you all being Strasburg Railroad's SW8 switcher number 8618. The best way to exemplify vintage from modern power is in the shot that I got back in 2024 of a pair of Norfolk Southern diesels on the NS mainline outside the museum, passing the 8202 with a manifest. Ironically though, the lead unit, SD40-2 number 3379, is what many railfans to be considered vintage power still in service, while the trailing unit, one of Norfolk Southern's many GEVOs, is very much modern power. As we make our way to the rear of the museum, we meet up with SMRX number 307, a heavyweight business coach used by the Atlantic coastline and eventually seaboard coastline. I find this coach significant as it was used behind A&WP number 290 back when the locomotive ran excursions. Another significant piece of rail equipment represents one of Georgia's craziest stories of the Civil War. Now, before this locomotive became known as the General II, it was originally constructed by Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1919 for the Red River and Gulf Railroad, known as their number 104. After serving for the Red River and eventually the Louisiana and Eastern, the locomotive was retired from active service in 1961 and sold to the Stone Mountain Scenic Railroad, which we'll get into what it represents today. Now, to the lesser known, this is not the actual General engine, however a representation. When the Stone Mountain got this engine, they cosmetically altered it to represent the Western and Atlantic locomotive by giving it a new headlight, different pilot, new paint, and General II nameplates. It hauled trips for the Stone Mountain and eventually became the memed locomotive as it is, being shoved around by a diesel locomotive on the tourist train. Eventually, the Stone Mountain donated it to the Southeastern Railway Museum, where it currently sits on display. One of the two steam locomotives that reside in what is considered the main building is Campbell Limestone number 9. This unique two-truck Heisler was built in 1923 and eventually donated to the Southeastern in 1979. And here's what is considered the crown jewel of the Southeastern, Savannah and Atlanta number 750. Being one of the more notable locomotives out of the Southeastern's collection, it was built by Alco in 1910 for the Florida East Coast Railroad, adorning the number 80. Eventually, after service on the FEC, it was passed on to the Savannah and Atlanta Railroad in 1935, gaining the number 750 and becoming its most notable form as seen here today. It was retired from active service by the SNA in 1948 and eventually donated to the National Railroad Historical Society of Atlanta in 1962. It hauled excursions and fan trips under the NRHS all over the Southeast up until 1989, where it started experiencing firebox issues and was eventually sidelined. Now, after that firebox incident, it sits on display at the Southeastern Railway Museum, now shining to what it once was. Shame this thing doesn't operate anymore. It would be cool to see it steaming alongside the other notable preserved Pacific types under preservation. Now, this next part of the video couldn't have been done without this guy here. A member of the museum, who I'll keep nameless to respect his boundaries, allowed me and my cousins back to the museum shop area to check out their restoration projects and the storage of many of their pieces of equipment. As soon as we walked in the shop, we were met with the sight of Southern Railway E8 number 6901. It's currently sitting in the shop awaiting a repaint, and then it will be put back into service. The 6901 is one of 4 Southern Railway E8s preserved throughout the country. The other that's been seen on the channel is Southern Railway number 6900, as pictured here at the North Carolina Transportation Museum. Posed next to the 6901 is Southeastern's 50-tonner, number 3, currently undergoing some minor repair work. The number 3 is the Southeastern's go-to locomotive for their museum trains, with the 8202 as an on-hand backup in case the 3 is out of service. If I had to guess, it'd be that both locomotives are on the shorter side compared to their operating companions. There is a short portion of track out by the Norfolk Southern Main Line that is used as a switchback from where the museum train starts out from on their property to where they shove back to near their shop area. As you can see out the front of number 3's cab, yeah, you ain't fitting much more than what they already roster on their museum train, plus the 2 cabooses in tow. To my knowledge, the biggest locomotive that has operated the museum train is Georgia Railroad number 1026. As we move back into the shop, we meet up with Georgia Power number 97. This little S100 tank engine is currently undergoing some cosmetic work before being placed back in the museum area for the public to view on display. Our tour guide explains a little bit of the process that they have to go through before the locomotive is ready to be seen on display.
Until we get to 6901 reading. So this will be repainted and put up on display. Eventually they got all the piping here.
And now we get into one of Southeastern's most famed pieces out of their collection by the railfan community, Atlanta and West Point number 290. As far as I was told, the 290 is undergoing cosmetic restoration and eventually will be put on display in the main buildings of the Southeastern Railroad Museum. The 290 was built in 1926 by the Lima Locomotive Works for the A&WP. It was one of 2 heavy Pacifics for the railroad and served the operation up until 1954 before being retired. With the help of multiple groups and certain individuals such as W. Graham Claytor of the Southern Railway, number 290 was saved from the scrapper's torch and returned to steam at the Southeastern in 1989. It hauled mainline trips for the New Georgia Railroad up until 1992 before being retired from excursion service and brought back to the Southeastern, now undergoing cosmetic restoration work as seen today. These guys at the front of the shop, though, are just some of the many projects they have going on in their back shop, and it's so intriguing to listen to and explore all the history back here. But I've only been showing you what's indoors. Let's go see what's sitting outside. The most interesting of note stored outside is Gainesville Midland number 203. Built by Baldwin in 1928, the locomotive was delivered to the Alabama, Tennessee, and Northern Railroad as their number 402. Eventually, in 1948, it was shipped off to the Gainesville Midland Railroad and served for them up until being retired in 1959. It's seen a few different lives under preservation, but now it sits at the Southeastern on the possible list of cosmetic restorations in the future. Now I can't go over everything seen out here, as it is a lot, but I'll go over the ones briefly that I have here on video. Here's number 290's cab sitting here on a flat car, New York, Ontario and Western number 104, an Alco S2 that I couldn't find any information on, and Southern Railway number 1509, also known as Maud. Making our way back up to the main museum grounds, we take a trip behind Southern 8202 on the museum train ride. A part of the consist is Southern Railway Transfer Caboose number 7871 and Norfolk and Western Caboose number 500-837. On crew that day was engineer Josh, conductor Trish, and brakewoman Mari. Shoutouts to them, by the way, for their very smooth ride and great hospitality. Once we reached the end of the line by the Norfolk Southern Main Line, Mari had me hop off the transfer caboose and we walked down to the switch to line it down to the shop area. And on the way down to the shop area, they were kind enough to let me blow the air whistle on the caboose through the crossing.
Don't worry, I do that stuff too.
You do it too?
Yeah. Let me see if I still have it in me. Where are we blowing for crossing wise?
Crossing wise, it's between, like you see this hinge here.
Yeah.
It's the hinge coming up off the very edge.
Okay. Oh boy.
Line car, crossing clear.
Going this year, Chuck. Supposed to be Atlanta in 2020. Atlanta City seems to be leaving up in the next
And after making a brief pit stop at the shop area, we're on our way back up the railroad. And now we've made it all the way back up to the Norfolk Southern Main Line and are getting ready to shove back into the boarding area.
One car. Half a car. 20 feet. 10 feet. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. That'll do it. Next up, we're gonna do.
With the day's events wrapped up, conductor, now engineer Trish, is at the throttle of the 8202 as the crew goes to put the locomotive to bed. Speaking of that, congratulations to you, Trish, whenever you get qualified on the locomotives at Southeastern. And just to add deja vu onto the end of the day, a Norfolk Southern manifest passes the museum and the 8202. And of course, with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching today. Special thanks to the Southeastern's operating crew, all members of the museum, and our tour guide that took us on the Backshop Tour. Huge thanks again to my cousins Jessica and Chelsea for spending the day out with me at Southeastern, and of course bringing me out there in general. Just having a train day with them was so much fun, and I'd love to do it again. Photos from that day, of course, will be up on Instagram and Facebook for those who want to check those out. Links are in the description, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.